Hi everyone, it's Vikki Williams, Tennessee State broker for Epique Realty, and it's Let's Level Up Friday, where every Friday I am interviewing a top producing agent or team leader at Epique Realty, and I'm asking them to share their secret sauce and open their playbook for you so that you can literally rip off and duplicate. And they are coming online to help you grow your business to the next level. Today I'm interviewing Mike Robb out of California. Hey Mike, how are you today?
Good, I'm doing great. How you doing?
Doing great. Thank you so much for being willing to come on and just be so willing to share what's working for you and hopefully help someone else level up their business. So, let's jump into it. Tell us just briefly a little bit about you and your background and how you got into real estate and when.
Sure. So, born and raised in New Jersey, but I left for the military back in April of 2000. So, joined the military in April of 2000, and I served 24 years in the military. During the course of my time in the military, I started investing in real estate. So, without going into too many details, bought and sold many homes, then got into private lending, got into commercial multifamily. So, I was always real estate adjacent my whole career. But as I was approaching retirement, I got licensed in October of 2020 as a realtor. Initially, I was actually looking to get the license primarily for the investing side. And then lo and behold, I already kind of had a good network of investors. I had a good network just through my military side of things. Um, I just started getting good traction with people knowing what I did on the retail side as a realtor. So got my first listing early in 2021, and then it was off to the races.
Awesome. So you mentioned being from a military background. Let's jump right into some things that are going to help these agents watching or listening to this replay today. What's one principle from your service background? And thank you for your service, by the way.
I
I'm a
appreciate it.
military brat, so thank you.
Yeah.
What's one principle from your service that directly translated into success in real estate?
So I would say, in the military, at least personally, I adopted the statement of how you do one thing is how you do everything, right? So in the military, that was, it was obviously impregnated into you through training and drills and everything else, but doing the right thing when nobody's watching, doing the extra work that you're not gonna get accommodation for or accolades, you're just doing it because it needs to get done. So the premise really is, how you do one thing is how you do everything. And that translates to how you send offers to other agents, how you respond to other agents. Every little step that you do from client to closing and all the people you interact with, to me, you treat everybody the same. You treat the same level of attention to detail to every little piece, and you kind of leave it all on the table, right? You've done all your effort, you've done the best you can with all the little pieces, and you don't shortcut anywhere, and you will have success.
No shortcuts. Being
Yeah.
self-employed, I think we tend to give ourselves a lot of shortcuts if we're not careful, and that will definitely affect your results, right?
Yeah, I walk around the house sometimes like a broken record. I have an 18 and almost 20-year-old, and I tell my I have a pension, I'm retired, and you still see me here every day, right? Just letting them know, like, you have to show up every day. There's no, like you said, there's no shortcut to success.
No shortcuts. And we hear the word consistency a lot. So a lot of agents struggle with consistency. How did the military discipline that you were lucky to be in, because I consider to be a lucky background in real estate, is to have military background. How did that discipline change the way you show up every day, even when you're not motivated?
Oh, 100%. So kind of like we were talking about earlier, I can count more days that there were things that had to get done that I had no desire to do than the days I walked into work and really wanted to do a lot of it, right? A lot of times in the military, especially in my profession, I did on the back end. I was working as a civil engineer officer for the Navy, and we were managing multi-million dollar contracts, and we were managing facilities. And then on the expeditionary side, we led Seabees. Those are our mobile construction force. So there was just a ton of variety of things depending on what job you had. And most days you don't wake up and choose to do them, right? You don't choose the tasks that are in front of you. And it's a matter of knowing that they have to get done. You can't, like we talked about previously, you can't shortcut them. And now when I wake up every day, I don't have the same structure I used to have, which is, a boss and your evaluations and, the things that are external to you that keep everything moving, the machine moving. So now you just have to adopt those same principles in your own business, especially if you're self-employed like we are, right? So that's generally the gist of it is just, knowing you don't choose to do all those tasks, but doing them anyway, doing it with the high degree that we just talked about, of accuracy and quality and just moving along.
And a lot of that boils down to mindset because you said in the military, you don't wait until you feel ready to do something. So, someone that doesn't have a military background, what mindset tip could you give them when maybe they're feeling scared or stuck or even just second guessing themselves?
Sure. So I use a little bit of analogy, if some people have heard it different ways, but kind of you can only see to the horizon, right? You can only go so far out into the future. You can try your best to plan every little step out into the future, but you can only see so far into the future. And a lot of times we get ourselves wrapped around the axle because we are here and we think we need to be all the way out there, right? We're comparing ourselves to somebody that makes it look easy or somebody that their phone's ringing all the time. So my feedback is even if you don't feel ready or you don't, you feel kind of stuck, just take those small steps and look just right in front of you, right? Do the next thing that you need to do. Pick up the phone, watch that CRM training. Just do all those next little steps to gain momentum. Like you said, when you feel stuck or you're second guessing it, um, that's definitely my advice, right? Is not get overwhelmed by the big picture. Just take those next steps.
Great advice. Especially the comparison, comparing yourself to others, that will set you back mentally.
Oh yeah.
And that's a hard
Yeah.
one to overcome for a
Yeah.
lot of
I
people.
I have a little balance of not necessarily comparing myself to others, but finding, I hate to say it, but finding targets, right? So like when I used to say run marathons or something or run trail runs, it was always nice to pick the person that you thought you could pace and get ahead of, right? So I do have that in my mind sometimes where I'm like, okay, I want to get to that level, but that's not I don't want them to succeed or I'm beating myself up. It's just, hey, they've achieved this level. I can do it just the same.
Love that. Okay. So we also talked the other day when we were chatting, or maybe it was yesterday. My days are running together, but we
Yeah.
talked about how a lot of agents wing it in this business, right? And they don't really have a clear plan. So how does your background help you spot that quickly? Whenever, or you don't wing it, you have a plan, but how does your background help you spot the areas that need tightening?
Yeah, so I would say everybody has the tendency to kind of go off track and I call it shiny object syndrome because I feel like a lot of us in this real estate sector, right? You you have to have a certain level of motivation and initiative and you have to believe that you can accomplish what you're trying to set out, right? So I tend to have sometimes an overconfidence in what I want to accomplish, but at the same time, I'm beating myself up because I haven't accomplished it yet. But when you talk to other people, it's not as rational, right? It's like there's no way you're going to be here yet because you have all this stuff to do. But in my mind, I'm like, well, why aren't you there yet, buddy? So that tends to add more pressure where you're just like you're saying, wing it. You're just kind of doing all these different things, and you're overdoing it, right? So I think my thing is you're sometimes when you're winging it, you're being busy, but you're not being productive. And I found early in my career or early in my investing, I would do a lot of things. I would talk to a lot of people. I felt like I was drained at the end of the day and, almost like going from this task to that task. But the main thing was I had the aha moment, probably, going into the end of 2021, I actually put a sticky up on my wall that said IPA, so income producing activities. So
Not
am
the
I doing
beer. Is that a beer
what? No,
also?
not the beer. No. So it's like, am I doing something that's actually going to lead to income, or am I doing things that feel good, right? Talking to people that aren't going to be buyers, or just doing those things that aren't really moving the needle. So I think focusing on that, and then definitely, tracking what you've done for the day and where that led to something, right? I'm not as organized as some of my friends where they have it down to a science with the KPIs and calls to leads, all those little things, but generally knowing, okay, I did these things and these were the results, just to keep you back on track if you feel like you're, like I said, winging it, kind of throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks.
Yeah, just like any business, you need a business plan, right? You need a
Yes.
budget, you need a plan, you need goals. So if you just have your license and you're just out there winging it with your real estate license, you're not
Yeah,
going to have consistent results. But so if you don't have a business plan and you're watching this and you're a realtor, get with a mentor, get with a coach, get with someone and get a business plan put together, then live by that plan. So military training, going back to the military one more time here, maybe a couple more times, but it
sure.
talks about preparation before execution. What does proper preparation look like for an agent before they ever talk to a client?
Yeah, so for me, I sometimes have a tendency to get ahead of my own self, right? So I do have ADHD. I think it's a blessing and a curse. It can be, Sometimes you're going really straight towards a topic and then you forget where you're heading, right? So one of the basics, right? Really basic things that I did that even when I was mentoring other agents or, talk to my own clients, it seemed like not as many agents were as prepared as I was when it comes to something simple and it sounds, rudimentary, but just I would create these checklists for each type of call. So if it's a new buyer consult, having a checklist, a selling consult, it was all sorts of things, reviewing an offer, just because I didn't want to leave anything to chance and I didn't want to rush anything because as you know, maybe you're on the call with a client and you have to get to something else or the counter offer came in and you're trying to review it and you miss something when you translate it back to the client. So that's what I found was, when we're talking about preparation was having all those checklists. One, it forced me to think about all the things I need to talk to them about, right? Are you looking for turnkey, a fixer? Do you have a lease? What does that look like? What's that timeline look like? Cash down payment. So a lot of those things that sound basic, but you might get on the call and then you finish the call and that was your opportunity to get that information. And now you're calling them back to get stuff and it just didn't sound like you were that prepared, right? Or you didn't get the
Mm.
information you needed and now you're behind. So for me personally, having all those, they were just Google Drive documents and all the checklists, and I would bring a new one up for each client. I've gotten to the point where now I can do most of it all just from memory, right? And I still will reference those checklists here and there, but I feel like that helped me a lot because, like we're talking about sometimes with when you're early on as an agent, you don't have that confidence. But if you have that checklist and you say, hey, let me just check my checklist for a minute, you're going to sound confident because you had a plan going into that call.
Great advice. If it's so if you're on this call and you don't have a checklist, get with your coach or mentor and say, I need some checklists, help me. Or chat GPT it. Like that's
Yeah,
my best friend, chat
yeah.
GPT. Her name's
I
Sage.
call it the holy server.
The holy server
I still feel weird giving it a gender or
is
I
my
say,
holy server. That's awesome. Okay. So you've taken a consultant style approach instead of chasing every transaction. When we talked the other day, you are a real estate consultant. You're not a realtor, and there's a difference. You believe that education and strategy create long-term success. Why is that so important to you?
yeah. So I think I always tell my other agents that I work with, right? You can almost kind of get the feel of another agent who is also trying to just sell the clients to an end state, right? Because if we're good as agents, we're good at negotiating, we're good at sales, we're good at marketing. We can use that to our benefit for our clients, but sometimes it feels like agents are just trying to get the client to make a decision and move on, right? They're just a check block. So, especially when I'm dealing with a lot of first-time home buyers, Or somebody's selling and they've never sold before. You have to take that into consideration. Just you think, oh, they bought a house, so they know what's happening on the sale. And I'm sitting here right now talking to you, and I have a couple text messages, and one of my clients like, when do you think we'll hear back? When do you think we'll hear back? Right? Like little things like that. So when it comes to my clients, I really make sure that there's an overarching kind of nature of, hey, like you said, Vikki, I'm helping you through this journey. I'm your consultant. I'm your consultant for life, right? I'm not just trying to get you to go from zero to buying a house. So you'll find sometimes that you can just tell the client that maybe might ghost some realtors and just disappear. They were just hesitant. They just were uncomfortable asking certain questions. They didn't want to feel like they were wasting your time. So I try to make sure that, I let them know, whether you're ready to buy or not ready to buy, or you're just kind of, you want to look for a little while. I try to make sure they understand that I'm comfortable with that, right? Obviously within reason. And then one of the things that I found that has served me a whole lot is similar to what we were talking about with the checklist, which is, let's say, Vikki, you're a new buyer. I will go over the purchase offer process even while we're searching for homes, right? So depending on the level of the client, I'll send them a copy of it, or we'll get on a Zoom and I'll go over what a purchase looks like, or a purchase offer rather. That way they know what the terms are, they know what things we can kind of tailor based on each offer. And then a lot of times I'll just go over what ifs, right? So we can use seller credit for this, or we can do something here. And preparing them ahead of the offer, in my opinion, helps a ton, because that way, when they found the house they love, it's almost like going back to what we are talking about the military. We've trained for this. We already know, we're already ready to submit the offer, and it's not 9 o'clock at night after touring 7 properties and the kids are, not abed yet, and they're trying to figure out what to do with their offer. So that sort of making sure they feel comfortable, making sure they're ready to ask questions, letting them know that if they're, if something changes, nobody's forcing them or trying to get them to close a deal. That I think pays dividends. And more often than not, I've had feedback from clients where they thought they have bought and sold before. They thought they've, you know, seen everything they've seen, and they go, we never even discussed this with our realtor, or we never knew this was an option. So it's just taking, giving that breathing room and really taking that time that they fully understand all their options, and they're not apprehensive to ask any questions.
This reminds me when I decided to niche into first time home buyers years ago, before I would ever meet a client at the first property, they had to come to my Zoom call and we had to go through a 1 hour presentation of the home buying process. And I know they were like, oh, but we just want to go look at this house. We know this is the one we want. But at the end of those calls, they always felt more confident in the process. And that's,
Yeah.
that's such a big piece when it does come to that decision making time, to have that understanding. They may forget half of what you told them, but at least they know that they can trust you to get them through the finish line because you're the expert, right?
Oh yeah, 100%. And I always joke with my clients because I tell them, like, I'll tell them stories about the clients that don't ask questions and the clients that do. And I tell them usually the clients that don't ask the questions are the ones calling me 2 weeks after closing. Oh, can we get the windows replaced? No, the HOA doesn't cover your windows, or things like that, where, I try to give them as much information as possible, but within balance, right? Each client's a little different.
For sure.
Yeah,
Now, what about the agents that are listening to this call that maybe don't have years of experience yet? How can they position themselves as a trusted expert without that experience? What are some things they could do?
100%. Yeah, so just like you're out there in Tennessee, I have Wolf Parlor and MJ Morris, right? And MJ, as the brokers that I have here, MJ loves to say she's the problem solver, right? So I have, even today, right? Even today after closing, I don't know how many 40 something clients in a few years, and, I don't know, 40 something million. If I have something where I think the broker is a good resource, I say, hey, I'm going to reach out to my broker and get some feedback on this situation. You're not giving up the fact that the client's not going to think you don't know what you're doing. You're saying, hey, I have a broker who has 40 years of experience, and her and I are going to strategize how to do a single unit FHA approval in your condo complex, while every other agent is saying, FHA is not available here, right? Like so the reach back support, and it's kind of similar in the military and any other job, right? Just knowing what your resources are, knowing how to use them, and even kind of like what we talked about with the clients and what you're doing, Vicky, with interviewing with your new agents. It's don't try and build that relationship when you need it, build it before you need it, right? And kind of get to know that person, provide value to them. So that goes back to whether it's the broker that you have, your area leader. Um, one of the things I think we talked about it the other day, but one of the things I did before I had a lot of clients was I sat down and read every car form possible. I downloaded all the car forms. So that way the forms, that's something you can do as a new agent with no clients is understand your forms, right? So we all know you don't really learn that when you go through school to get your license. So learning the forms was a big one for me because then I could see how it all relates before I even do a transaction. Um, Now, a lot of, I know we have different participants on the call and people that will watch this later, but, I'm not a lender, but I know the VA loan process very well because I read the VA handbook, right? It's not rocket science and it's in chapters and you read it and now when you go back to look at something, you're trusting your lender, but you're also understanding where all these things are coming from, right? So I think, just using your peers, using your broker resources. When I first was mentoring agents at the previous brokerage, I would let them know all the time when you talk to a client, going back to what we're saying, if you don't have a lot of experience, when you talk to a client, you can use us as referred authority, right? Me and my partner
My team
Mike,
and I, my
my
partner and
team
I,
and
my
I, yeah,
team and
you
I.
hear that. You hear that a lot, but I just don't know if agents are confident enough to really leverage that, right?
Right.
And if you don't know something, I'll figure it out, right? Say I'll go figure it out. And going back to the military service, that was always the thing was you're not going to know everything, but if you know how to find the answers really quickly, you will succeed.
So what I heard you say also is like be a student of your craft, study your
100%.
craft. They don't teach you how to sell real estate in real estate school. So it's up to you once you get your license to continue learning to study your craft. Okay. So let's switch gears a little bit. So you work with a lot of VA loan buyers. You mentioned that a moment ago, military families. Why did you choose to specialize in that realm instead of just staying a general realtor? And how has that focus paid off for you, Mike?
Yeah, so early on when I got licensed, again, we talk about, okay, here's your license, you got the keys to go, find clients and do transactions, but where do you start? And for me, it was really a no-brainer given that I was in a military area, active duty, and looking to stay in the area for the foreseeable future. So the choice of kind of niching down and making that my focus was pretty self-explanatory. But one of the things I did early on, there was a book that talked about becoming hyper-local in your market. So the strategies that it was teaching wasn't necessarily niche dependent. It was just how to work within that niche, right? So no matter what niche you pick, whether you're a first responder, you're a teacher, some of the other ones we've talked about, it's not just picking the niche, it's then how do you work within that niche, right? And one of the things that I can relate to my clients on a lot is their PCS, their permanent change of station, basically their move. So, things like the fact that I was prior enlisted and then an officer, right? So I've experienced both sides of what the military life is like, depending on, where you're at in your career. So, staying in that niche, um, not just knowing what the niche is, but then utilizing tools within that niche, right, is something that helps as well because you might say, well, I want to be a military centric realtor in my area, but the question becomes, okay, what value are you going to provide within that niche? So I think that paid dividends for me as well because I think we talked about it a little previously, but something like the VA loan assumption, that is a very particular tool that anybody can use, but it's more readily available for military. So, thinking through what are the things that can serve this niche as best I can and what are the resources I can provide.
Lean in, plug in, immerse yourself into that world, not just as
Yes.
a realtor, right? But
Yes.
also events, functions, like be involved in whatever niche you're choosing. Don't just be on the outside just serving their real estate needs, but serving their community as well.
Yeah, and you brought up a good point. So my wife and I, she helps in the business. She's also a full-time bookkeeper, runs her own business there. But we have multiple different Facebook groups, right? All things military, Ventura County, uh, assumable VA loans. So you can sub niche even within your groups, right? And like you said, provide value, provide updates on the market, provide events that are happening around town, and then yeah, 2026 we definitely are going to try and be a little more structured and plan ahead all the different events, sponsoring golf tournaments, doing things like that.
Love it. Love it. We're going to talk more about your future here in a minute, too.
hmm
So, when an agent starts to feel overwhelmed by systems, scripts, tools, what is a simplifying move you would tell them to make right now?
And I suffer from that, right? So again, that's shiny object syndrome. You hear about the new AI thing, or you're even like we know if you're not at Epic or you're with Epic now, and you still get stuff from Lofty. Hey, do you want to upgrade this? Do you want to? And they're valuable things, but they can just take you off track, right? So for me, the scripts, the tools, everything, it doesn't matter if you're not picking up the phone, right? So for me, it's, I have a CRM, but I use Apple Notes because I can quickly switch between my notes on my iPad, my phone, my MacBook. Um, I still feel like I should shift over to other tools, but it's working for me now, right? So picking something that is working for you, removing the friction of, oh, I should try this or I should try that. That definitely helps, but it's still hard not to, you know, get sidetracked a bit. But definitely just picking up the phone and making calls, and whether it's your network, whether you're following it up with other service professionals, because at the end of the day, if you're not talking to people, you're not closing clients. That's really for me, it's, and again, there's people on this call that probably are a lot better than me at their checklist of I have to do this many calls this week by this thing. For it I don't do that, right? I just put out the energy every day, and I make sure that I again, how you do one thing is how you do everything. So between the beginning and the end, I want my phone to have people texting me. I want, referrals to come in, and all that involves just talking to people. Now, it doesn't have to be picking up the phone, right? You can connect on social media. You can, I all day you can go through some of these different groups. You can engage with other people's content, and before you know it, a lot of times I see this myself and other agents. You're putting stuff out there and you're posting, and you think nobody's engaging with it, but then somebody calls you out of left field that you haven't talked to in about a year, and they're like, "Oh, I see you're doing well in real estate," and you didn't even think that people were seeing it, right? So yeah, picking up the phone, kind of getting out there, putting yourself out there. I think that helps to eliminate a lot of the other noise.
Yeah, and I love that you touched on something that I want to talk about real quick. Your Apple Notes works for you. And
Yes,
I think that people in this industry feel like, and I know they do, right? Like if I can't master Lofty, I'm failing at having a CRM. I fail. If I can't master Lofty, I've got to do this. Lofty is a tool that can help you. But it's not the only tool for CRMs. And I'm just going to show you real quick my CRM tool. So this is something I started years ago and it works for me. When I get a client or a lead, I just put them in my 3-ring binder and I write down
yep,
their name and their what they're looking for, the date I got them, how I got them, what they're looking for. This is my CRM. But I'm intentional about using this weekly. I go back and I look through anyone that I don't have a big C for contract or a big highlight for closed. If they're not C or highlight, I'm touching them until they are, right? Work with whatever works for you. This works for me. It's worked for me for 30 years. So don't
yep,
worry about the lofty, but worry about something. Have a system, right?
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, I love that you did that. I love that you shared that because that's inspiring. Okay, speaking of inspiring, we're almost at the end of this call. Then I want to open it up to some Q&A or whatever. But who inspires you? Do you have a specific mentor, coach, podcast, book that you lean on?
So I would say for me, it's not as traditional as the response would be, right? It's not a industry person or a coach. It really is my family. And w- you know, it's hard to describe what you can accomplish when you know why you're doing it and who you're doing it for. And not to get too deep, but I lost my mother at a young age to cancer, and it it puts a almost like an urgency, right? I was 19 years old, so it gives you an urgency in life, right? It gives you an urgency that, I'm 45 this year. That's the age she was when she passed away. So from the day she passed away to where I'm at now, I thought, okay, I have a wife and two children. I had, kids fairly young and in my 20s, and that has always been my inspiration when I don't feel like making that call or last night at 9:30 I'm writing an offer, and it's just, knowing that I'm providing for them, I'm providing for their future. And, that like the little guy behind me, that's my son from in the background from when he was a little kid, right? And, a lot of times what I look at is what I want my future to look like with grandkids, right? And what freedom I want when that time comes. So really, that is 100% my inspiration in anything I've done and every outcome that I've had from any goal I've ever tried to achieve. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Because
what does your next level look like, Mike? Where are you
sure.
planning to go and how are you going to get there?
Yeah. So, for me, the transactions have been coming, right? So, up, down markets, I know that I've built a lot of momentum and I have a good network of clients that refer me. So, I know the transactions are going to come, but what I'm working on now is smoothing it all out, right? Not being on vacation, answering calls, not always having to take my laptop everywhere. So I'm definitely going to have to put a little more systems and process in place. And, going back to mentors, coaches, I have confided in a lot of my folks at Epic in my upline that are way past where I'm at when it comes to growing large teams. And a lot of them have given me advice about, starting with admin, starting with a showing assistant. So in 2026, there's some steps I'm going to take to add that into the business just to, like I said, kind of even things out a little bit. So it's not just morning to night every day and feeling like you haven't stepped off that treadmill in a while. And, it's a good problem to have. So I'm happy to address this challenge, but it's definitely something where, I joke with people, you need to take time to work on the business so you have more time. It's that space there where it's like I have to be able to put things aside and work on the business so that we can kind of come up above the water a little bit, get some breathing room, and then we'll be able to provide even more value, serve more clients, but do it at a more consistent pace.
And I know somebody on this call or listening to this replay is feeling every word of that. And
Oh
in
yeah.
fact, Mindy's probably feeling every word of that. Mindy's my sister in Florida. She came in a little late, but she's probably feeling every word of that right now because it's hard. We juggle a lot. Mindy's nodding her head. Mindy, you be careful driving. It's hard. We juggle so much, and it is hard to keep your head above water without scaling at some point. And by the time you're a power agent, you're doing 24 deals or more a year or 20 million or 10 million in volume. And that means you're busy and you're busy at all stages of someone's journey in real estate. And it could be consuming. Is
Yes.
that work-life balance is very hard in real estate. So, um, thank you for sharing that, being transparent about that. So that's all I have for you as far as questions goes, Mike. So I want to open it up to anybody that has a comment, an aha moment, or a question for Mike. Come off mute and we could chat for a few minutes. Don't be shy. We're not
Yeah.
strangers here.
I want to know how was it, you said Kay had done how many transactions? I definitely that was it her that you said did how many transactions for Power Agent? or no?
No, it wasn't Kay. It
Who?
was today I said it?
Somebody was on a call recently, no?
No.
Okay, gotcha.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah,
I don't remember that, but that doesn't mean anything either because
yeah,
I'm getting older. You said something that really spoke to me, and that is that you lost your mother at a young age. I'm sorry. But I lost my mother to cancer as well, and she passed at 59, and I'm 55. And
yeah.
I could tell you that has created some momentum in me to reach my goals faster because you do appreciate your time that you have when you've lost someone close to you at a younger age. And I want to be here for my kids and my grandkids. I want to see my granddaughter graduate high school, something my mother didn't have the luxury of doing with some of her grandchildren. And so that's a big why for me as well. It's my motivation for sure. So I'm glad you shared that. I'm sorry about your mom, but that does change your perspective a little bit, doesn't it?
It
I
does,
think.
yeah. It does. And like I said, I'm very cognizant of the fact that you still have to have a healthy, balanced approach. So there's two sides, but it definitely I have always had a big sense of urgency. Like we talked about, like when I was in the military, I made, promotions very quickly, but then I'm looking at my peers next to me and it's like, okay, well, I'm doing much more work but getting paid the same, right? So kind of a segue, but that was part of the reason I loved real estate. And some of my mentors say it can be a key to print money. And I'm not materialistic by any means. Trust me, I drive my '06 Honda CRV, right, with 240,000 miles. And I'm not materialistic. It's just that money time freedom, right? It buys you time freedom. I want to be able to pick up the phone and call the kids and say, hey, we're going to Disney, right? Like we're going to Disneyland, pack up the grandkids. So definitely just having that ability to have time freedom comes with what I believe to be financial freedom. And that's a whole nother conversation, but the financial freedom and then what I call financial independence. So the financial independence piece is what really gets me excited when I talk to new agents or aspiring agents is just my definition of financial independence is my own ability to generate income for myself and my family. I'm not relying on my boss. I'm not relying on that meeting. If it's meant to be, it's on me. So I think that has helped a lot, kind of take that energy and emotion that I have to the shortness of life and turn it into like we discussed, this ability to control certain aspects in your life and look into the future and plan and have the life that you want by just sticking to the goals and just
Sticking
sticking
to the
to it.
goals and being honest and truthful with yourself about what you're doing and what you're not doing. And I've done a lot of these interviews now, Mike. I've done them for several months now. And one of the things I've heard repeatedly is show me your calendar and I'll show you your bank account. And for the people who are saying, I'm not having any success, I challenge you, look back at what you have done. If you've been busy in income producing activities, those IPAs that Mike talked
Yeah.
about, have you been busy or have you been busy with IPA? And then if it hasn't been IPA, change now. Now's the time. But the beauty of this business is that you can redirect, pivot, change, adjust every day until you get it right. If you're doing stuff that's not working, stop doing that. Stop doing that and start doing the things that work,
Yeah.
right?
I was at my listing for my new photos, so I missed that. So what's an IPA?
Oh, so early on we were talking about when kind of like you're there's a multitude of overlap, right? But when you're just getting started and maybe you're doing too much, you're not really focused, but income producing activities. So for a
Oh,
while there, I would go through the whole day and feel like I did a whole bunch of stuff, but I was really just I use the term like playing whack-a-mole or that like kind of visual analogy of trying to push five different rocks up a hill, right? But none of them were really getting up the hill and none of them were getting over the hill. And then I'd look back at everything I was doing and yeah, maybe there's some baseline where you're building stuff, you're building momentum in the future, but I wasn't able to trace I was doing this and this was going to result in a referral, a sale, a purchase. So really just kind of narrowing it back down to what am I doing today and how is it going to lead to an income producing activity? And again, we were talking about this more in the tense of like somebody getting started or not having a direction.
Got it.
Now what we're talking about for me is not as much that, but pivoting to how can I do those IPAs but not lose what's left of my hair or something, right? Like running the
Got
business
it.
better. So yeah.
Got it. Thank you for explaining that to me. Thank you.
Yeah.
I heard IPA and I got thirsty all of a sudden.
Yeah,
I was gonna
right.
go to the fridge, but anyhow, um, this has been really good. I think sometimes realtors are looking for the magic button, right? Like, okay, I want to be successful, but how do I get there without consistency, without time blocking, without a business plan? How do I just go ahead and get to that big paycheck or that big $100,000 a year goal or whatever they want to earn?
Yeah.
There's no magic pill. There's no magic button. It's consistency. It's work. It's self motivation. It's having a plan and sticking to it.
Yeah,
It's really simple.
and I watched the interview with our friend Charles Manley, right?
Yes.
And I find that there's a lot of overlap, obviously, with him and I, and we've worked with clients together. But one thing to note, and I'm not saying this will work for everybody, right? But like we described, I got my license in 2020. I didn't retire from the military until 2024. So keeping that in mind, I was working a full-time arduous job for the Navy, managing multi-billion dollar facilities at a base, lots of clients, lots of customers, lots of meetings. It was what am I doing before work? What am I doing after work? What am I doing in the car on my lunch break? I'm going to the Liberty Center where they have Wi-Fi to write offers, and I used to joke about changing like Superman in the car from my military uniform to my polo, and it was 7 days a week, 10, 12 hours a day, working at 12:30 at night because I wanted to prove to myself that the next step was viable so that I had zero apprehension about kind of, pushing off the dock and taking the boat out to sea, right? I had, and a reason I'm bringing that up is, sometimes maybe you're trying to go full time, all in as a realtor, but you got to retreat a little bit, get a baseline of income and whatever work you're doing, and then build your business back up. And I think a lot of us entrepreneur minded folks have that similar background where you were working the job, maybe you weren't getting the value you used to have at the job, or you weren't feeling, like you were part of something bigger, or you were just ready for that next thing. And that's one item of feedback I would definitely give is if you can do it like that to transition, don't be afraid to try and do it that way.
I love that you said don't be afraid to retreat. Like it's okay if you have to go get a part-time job to have that baseline income. That's not a failure. That is actually a win because the failure would be to get so broke to where you have to go back and get a full-time job and not and just give up your real estate license altogether.
Yeah.
So recognize where you need a little extra income. And one of the best things to do, in my opinion, is if you're in real estate and you're struggling, is to go do something like DoorDash, Uber Eats, Grubhub, Lyft, where you can do things around your schedule, around your client's schedule, have some money coming in, um, but still be able to have the flexibility to where if you do have an appointment, you're not asking for time off and you can go, right? So
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. Like I went and bought, well, not bought, but I owned an Amazon hub, and I did that for 2 years. What, 23, 24, 24, 20, half of 25. I can't even remember now because real estate was slow and I needed to. And I was not ashamed of that. Even that, and I've been a realtor for 11 years, because you do have those ups and flows, but it was a great source of income that was needed for our family at that time. So, and you still did real estate on the side. So I like how you said that, still work and do real estate, just put in the hours. If you're determined and disciplined and you want it, you'll do it. You'll do whatever it takes.
that's right.
100%.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay, anybody else got anything for Mike? We've run over by about 5 minutes, but I love it because these are the conversations that get you thinking, get you recommitted, get you growing. So anybody else got anything for Mike real quick?
No, I'm sad I missed half of it, but I'll go back and watch it.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, Mike, thank you so much for today. I appreciate you. It's good getting to know you better, and you're inspiring to me. It makes me really want to take a step back and just look at where I am not spending some IPA time and check out my calendar again. So thank you so much. I really do appreciate you today, and I'll get you a copy of this replay.
All right, thank you. And I
All
appreciate
right.
your hospitality when we were in Tennessee. So,
Oh
yeah.
yeah. Oh
Yep.
yeah. Well, anytime. Come back. Let me know when you're coming.
All right, take care.
All right. Bye, you guys.
Bye.
Everybody have a great day.
You too.